Red Dead Redemption, one of the most beloved games of all time. 10 out of 10s and masterpiece labels everywhere, from credible people too, not just some random ass redditors. But after playing this game, you really have to ask if it truly deserves all the praise that it gets. Is it really a masterpiece? But before we do anything, let's look at why people love the game. So firstly, most people seem to agree that the gameplay is dated and rough. Some people suggest a remaster and others say it's fine how it is. The setting and story are very beloved, and some people actually prefer this game's story to Red Dead Redemption 2, which is fine. But then we go back to something very interesting, which is the praise for the tech aspects in the open world. Back in 2010, there was a lot of praise for how good it looked, and now there's a lot of praise for how it looks for the time. So yeah, very interesting. So after watching all these Red Dead Redemption reviews, I feel like it's important to tell you guys that I really only played this game because of Red Dead Redemption 2. When I first played Red Dead Redemption 2 back in 2018, I was really overwhelmed by the game's size. I remember actually quitting when I saw that I was like 3% done on the save menu. Now you guys have to realize that in 2018, I was basically still a fetus. I did not have half the knowledge I do now. So when it came to the story, I simply was not developed enough to take much away from it. But in June of this year, I decided to give the game another go. And holy shit, Red Dead Redemption 2 has the most realized story in gaming. Now you can have your preferences with the narrative, but when it comes to the characters and world, I have never seen a game more realized. And I've seen lots of games. It's also one of the only games I've seen that really wouldn't work as a TV show or a book because it's not just the narrative. It's more of like a real living world that the characters live in. It might seem unconventional, and the game really does take its time setting things up, but the payoff is some of the most powerful character moments in fiction. And by the end, I was so invested in the world and characters that it only took one random ass Reddit user to say that Dutch himself was in the first game for me to buy Red Dead Redemption for $30. I emphasize my experience with Red Dead Redemption 2 to show my thought process going into Red Dead 1. Undoubtedly, my biggest interest in the game was the story. So let's talk about that first. The story starts with this weird, generic $3 opening, and this actually got me scared, bro. Like, I wasn't expecting Red Dead Redemption 2 levels of writing, but this was an Xbox 360 game, and I know Redditors say anything. Thankfully, the story got better and pretty much completely abandoned whatever they were trying to set up here, but still, what the fuck, Rockstar? What are you trying to scare me like that, you bastards? But then John starts talking and I'm like, damn, that's the same guy. And then you go to this sand fortress and Bill's there and he's pretty much exactly like how he was in the second game. And at this point I'm like, damn, this is like a full-on sequel to Red Dead Redemption 2. So then John gets shot and I'm like, oh shit. But then we get revived by this girl, so we help her out. So I'm like, okay, cool. And the dialogue writing and the vocal performances to make the characters feel real is actually pretty good and better than most games today. So then since you're going after Bill, you go to the sheriff and he's like, nah, too dangerous. So I'm like, okay, yeah, we have to gain his trust first. But then the game makes you start helping this old weirdo and I'm like, why? And then you have to help this insane weirdo and an Irish guy and you end up doing like 500 favors for them to form like this shitty Avengers. So then everyone assembles and they raid the fortress, but Bill's not there, so you have to go to Mexico, which is the bottom half of the map. All the characters leave, so you start meeting new characters, and then you fight in like a Mexican war for 5 years. And at one point I was like, am I even playing the right game, or like, what the But then finally you face Javier, who's completely unrecognizable, but whatever. You capture him and arrest him, and then Bill randomly shows up, so you kill him, and all that happens in like the span of 10 minutes. So by this point, I'm like, okay, we completed the objective, is that it? And then the game's like, nah, we have to go after Dutch. So I'm like, okay, yeah, for sure. So we again leave the previous characters and meet these new characters, which are like fine, I guess, whatever. But this time, instead of doing a bunch of favors for them, the characters are actively going after Dutch, which is good. This, I would say, is the best section of the game because the narrative actually flows cohesively. Dutch's character here kind of makes me question what the fuck the point of his character arc in the last game was, but he dies, so I guess mission complete. So we go back to our family and it's nice to see these characters again, like Jack, Abigail, Uncle. We get some good character moments, but we also get some of the worst fucking levels in the game ever, like actually. Some of the most unfun, annoying, broken ass levels, like it's actually abysmal. But we do get to grow with our family, but I don't know where the military comes back for us and everybody fucking dies. And that's the story. This story was very disappointing after Red Dead Redemption 2 with the lesser quality of writing and a totally different tone. Most of the story was very unengaging because of how they structured it, and the characters are just hopelessly outmatched by the ones in Red Dead Redemption 2. It's not terrible, but it's not anything special either. I can't take anything that happens seriously because it's just too different from the second game where I just think of them as two different things. But the truth is, That's how I felt the first time I completed the game. And I realized everybody loves this game, but I don't, so I got to work on a script. And as I was writing and editing it, I realized that my point that these two games are different also made it unfair that I came into this game comparing it to Red Dead Redemption 2. And I wasn't even planning on reviewing this game originally, so I had to get footage either way, so I booted it up and I started a new game. And you know the intro cutscene that I made fun of earlier? Something crazy happened. It actually made sense. And I'm not talking about the cutscene itself, alright? I'm not illiterate. But it made sense within the entire point of the Red Dead Redemption franchise. So I looked up Dutch's death on YouTube. And after watching it, I smashed my monitor. Not because it was bad, but because it was really good and now I had to rework the entire script. Playing the game twice made me see the Red Dead Redemption franchise clearly. I should have known that Rockstar wouldn't have been so dumb to make two different games with completely different stories under the same name. The obvious would be the returning characters, but what really connects these games is change.
Okay, there she is. A real city. The future. Big cities. They're always repellent. Exactly.
I've never really been interested in Western movies because the Wild West looked fucking boring. So I'm not saying that change is a common Western theme, but it wasn't the only Western movie I've ever watched.
What are you building out here?
The future, Mr. Rango. You can either be part of it, or you can be left behind. I was here before the highway split this great valley. I watched the march of progress, and I learned a thing or two.
Well, you look at Red Dead Redemption 1, and this was praised as the king of Western games when it came out. But you don't even play as a cowboy. In fact, you hunt cowboys. You fight in a Mexican war. You help this alternate version of Nathan Drake who never found a wife. The game itself takes place in like 1911, which isn't even really Wild West, so what even is this game? Well, in the second game, the gang hopelessly tries to fight change, and in Red Dead Redemption, you play as change. To me, the Wild West is about outlaw versus law, chaos versus order, and there really is no place for an outlaw in modern civilization. You bring change to Bill, you bring change to Mexico, you bring change to the natives, and in the world of Red Dead Redemption, change always comes with death. I really like this quote by Dutch where he says that they need to find new monsters to justify their wages. And then John, who really did end up playing the game right, still ends up dead. It's a bitter but real ending, and you gotta love that. But as much as I like the themes, this story is still definitely not perfect. I still think the story is pretty unengaging with how it's structured, where you have to do a bunch of stuff before you can progress. Some of the characters clearly could have been handled differently, especially after playing Red Dead Redemption 2, but I do know that you should separate the games and you should really be pointing to Red Dead Redemption 2 for writing them better than they were here, but I don't know, man, it's weird. It's not like the characters were written poorly, it's actually not bad, but they just aren't on the same level of the second game. Like, I wish they didn't make Dutch such a villainous bad guy in this game, because Dutch kind of redeems himself by the end of the second game. I did like his ending, but he didn't have to shoot a girl in the head in cold blood. Obviously, it's not fair because Red Dead Redemption came out beforehand, but how can I help myself? Ignoring Red Dead Redemption 2, the characters in this game were fine. Some were weaker than others, but it never really got bad. But I will say, this game did not have good character writing. In a game like this, you'd expect more complex relationships, but for the most part, it's just you help me, I help you, goodbye. Of course, this doesn't apply to pre-established relationships like Dutch or the family, but the only one they were really able to build well was Bonnie McFarlane. And that's 1 out of like 7. And the fact that these characters don't really show much of themselves to John means they don't show much of themselves to us, the player. Irish is a good example of this, with him obviously having a drinking problem, but the game never really even tries to explore what type of pain he's suppressing and instead just makes him a funny guy that progresses the plot. And this is the case for most characters in the game. They're only written well enough to whatever base purpose they serve in the story. Like, don't even compare this to Red Dead Redemption 2, take The Last of Us. We probably spend like a combined 20 minutes with Bill in this game, but we learn so much about him because he's written like a real human being. However, I did enjoy most of this game's dialogue, and while the narrative goes off on some pretty uninteresting detours, I'd still say the story is fine. What I realize now is that Red Dead Redemption 2 is a love letter to Red Dead 1. The influences are so obvious everywhere and it's cool to think about. Rockstar really sat in their bed at night and said, fuck it, let's go again. And the effort they put into Red Dead Redemption 2 shows, man. And while I do believe the difference in quality can be alienating, there is no doubt that Red Dead Redemption 2 makes Red Dead Redemption's story more impactful.
We can't always fight nature, John. We can't fight change. Can't fight gravity. We can't fight nothing. My whole life, all I ever did was fight.
Then give up, Dutch.
But I can't give up, neither. I can't fight my own nature. That's a paradox, John. You see?
Then I have to shoot you.
When I'm gone, they'll just find another monster. They have to. Because they have to justify their wages.
That's their business.
Our time has passed, John.
Now, the story is not the only praised part of Red Dead Redemption. It is probably the best part of the game, but probably the most appealing aspect is the open world and the mechanics of being a cowboy. This is where my experience with playing Red Dead Redemption 2 beforehand shines the brightest. This game was praised for the tech back then and still is now. I do not care that this game came out in 2010. There have been great games all throughout the years, and after playing Red Dead Redemption 2, this game is dated. It's not bad, but it's not really good either. The open world is just empty with no reason to explore. Sometimes there's random ass guys needing help and that's it. But basically in Red Dead Redemption, you get bounties to get money and then you can go to the bar. There's also a bunch of side quests, which is cool, but not really anything that interesting. It's also of course hopelessly outmatched by Red Dead Redemption 2, where the open world actually feels like a real world. Hunting also actually works in that game. But let's talk about the traversal now, or horses. In Red Dead Redemption 2, the horses actually feel like real animals, and it's frightening. And in Red Dead Redemption 1, but guys, it's time to talk about the actual gameplay. It's absolutely incredible how a development team like Rockstar Games, who masters their craft and takes it further with each game, still neglect the actual gameplay. They make shooters with de-emphasized aiming, and yes, you can turn off the aimbot, but then you're left with this terrible aiming and ancient cover shooting mechanics. And Red Dead Redemption is no different. In fact, it's worse because of how dated the game is. Just compare Red Dead Redemption 2 to Uncharted or Last of Us. Actual night and day, it's crazy. Rockstar Games just refuses to evolve their gameplay at all. This is my biggest problem with Rockstar Games, it's the fact that their gameplay sucks. Like, how am I supposed to say that Red Dead Redemption 2 is one of the greatest games of all time when a fucking dog could beat it? If they had any sort of aiming, that would be incredible. But they just fucking don't. But I guess shooting is shooting, you know, it's not gonna get boring to shoot a guy in a video game. And I do appreciate how this game has no kill markers, but the cover system is straight up broken. Like, damn, it pissed me off. And the movement is pretty dog shit, but whatever. And then we also have to talk about the enemy AI, which is absolutely worthless. They do nothing. They are incapable of challenging you. And this seals the deal on the game's combat being bad. Like, there's nothing that it does that's interesting or surprising or unique at all. It's the most basic combat system of all time. Now, this game throws a good amount of types of levels at you, with the first being shooting sections. Again, you can't really get bored here, but it's also pretty unengaging and easy. All of your difficulty will stem from the game being broken. You also have sections where you're shooting from your horse or stagecoach, and these are annoying. I hate them. It's frustrating to have to shoot and direct your movement at the same time, so every time there's a guy coming at me, I'm just And then you have these terrible turret sections where it just turns off the aimbot, so you're forced to kill these innocent horses. Like, how dare you, Rockstar? And even when it's just shooting normal guys, the aiming fucking sucks. And then you have the non-combat levels, which are fucking ass. Like, how do these levels get approved? They're so boring. You have this one where you have to direct these dumbass cows, one where you have to capture these stupid ass horses, and then one where you have to shoot crows. Like, damn, this is dog shit. And don't even get me started on the racing, which is actually the best part of the game because it's the only part that actually is engaging and takes effort. So yeah, good job, kid. Red Dead Redemption is ultimately a good game, but it simply cannot be a masterpiece. The level design, open world, and gameplay are all dated and really nothing special. The story, while having some great elements, is really not a consistently great experience. But what I can say about this game is that it's undoubtedly influential. That obviously does not equate to quality, but it's amazing what Rockstar was able to do in 2010. So ultimately, guys, I'll give Red Dead Redemption a 5 out of 10, which might sound low, but it's a good 5, alright? It's definitely a quality game. But yeah, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.
Jesus Christ, man, what the fuck is up with these little